We are in a series called Real Answers to the World's Questions. And the question that we're looking at last week and for the next several weeks is there a God? Literally, is there a God? Last week we looked at only objections to believing in a loving, personal God. There were two biggies. I'm going to tell you what they are, and if you missed last week, I'd encourage you to go back and look at the sermon. But the two things we discussed last week is, why do people not believe in a God? And the two biggies that we know of is, number one, the problem of evil. Well, if there's a God, why does all the evil go on? We answered that one, I hope, in a pretty full way. And then the second one is the scientific age. People think that science has basically proven that there is no God, which is absolutely false. And that's what we're going to start looking at over the next several weeks, okay? Today we're going to start looking at evidences for there being a God, specifically from natural evidences. In your outline, if you open up, there's a place to follow along. Dean Ullman writes this, and this is on your outline. You're going to have some places to fill in. Here's what he says. Theologians have historically categorized the Bible and nature as two books: special revelation and general revelation. The inspired scriptures of the Jewish and Christian faith, Old Testament and New Testament, are together called special revelation. Their combined influence extends all over the world, stands at the heart of Western culture, making the Bible the most widely translated, circulated, and studied book in history. The Bible speaks of itself as a written revelation from God. It claims to teach us what is true and to help us understand what is wrong in our lives. It offers to point us in the right direction and to teach us how to develop good relationships with both God and man. The second of God's two books is, I'm still quoting him, the second of God's two books is the book of nature. This is the record of God that is written in the natural world around us and in the pages of the human heart. It is considered general in that it is revelation of truth that has always been available to all people throughout history. It is the handiwork of God in creation itself, and it serves as a record of God's actions in earth and in human history. Folks, it is this second book, the book of nature, that I want to approach today and spend some time on for actually the next several weeks as we look at the evidences of God. My only problem with this area is literally there is so much evidence for God, it's hard to categorize, and the information is so extensive that it's kind of difficult to decide what do you include and what should be left out. I'm just going to put a few things together, okay, and hopefully this will help you out. On your outline today, we're going to look at confirmatory evidence from nature. From nature. Men might say today and have said, I never saw him. I never heard him. I never was able to touch him. Therefore, God must not exist. Roy Weiss, whom I mentioned last week, tells a story about a place that I don't know if it still exists or not. At the time that Roy told the story, it still exists, okay? He said there's a place in Chicago where you were able to literally get up on a soapbox and talk about whatever you wanted to as people walk by. And he said that one day there was a man that got up on the soapbox and began to argue and challenge the existence of God with the very arguments that I just shared with you. In fact, here's what the young man said. If God exists, let me see him. If God exists, let me touch him. And a man in the audience said, sir, may I ask you a question? Yeah, go ahead. He goes, what's your definition of an idiot? The man on the soapbox said, well, that'd be somebody who's just stupid, somebody who doesn't have a brain. And the man in the audience said, sir, I profess that you're an idiot. Obviously, the man on the soapbox disagreed with that and protested, but the man in the audience said this. He goes, I've not seen your brain yet. Can you take it out so I can see it? Can you take it out so that I can actually touch it? And the man on the soapbox walked away. The man in the audience got up and began to present evidences of God. God has left confirmatory evidences all around us of his existence. Now, certainly the historical evidence is the greatest and the clearest, but there are all kinds of confirmatory evidence from nature that surrounds us. The story is told of an atheist and a Christian crossing the desert together. They had several conversations about the existence of God, and finally the atheist said, I'm sick of this discussion, I'm tired of it, I don't want to listen, we're done, okay? He didn't see any evidence for the existence of God. That evening, they set up camp, went to bed. The next morning, the Christian was awakened to shouts from the atheist. A lion has been in the camp. A lion has been here. The Christian looked out of his tent and said, yep, in his mind, he's saying there's a lion because there was clothes scattered everywhere, food boxes had been torn open, and there were paw prints leading out to the desert. But the Christian said out loud, there wasn't any lying here. And the atheist replied, what do you mean? Look at this mess. And by the way, there are the footprints. About that time, the sun was coming up over the desert horizon, and the Christian said, and there, my friend, are the footprints of God. Folks, I want us to take a look at just a few of the many footprints of God. Evidences of his existence. I told you last week that there are three basic areas of evidence: natural, historical, and experiential. But technically, there are at least 6 kinds of confirmatory evidences of God. They are, this on your outline, you have to write them down, but axiological, cosmological, experiential, historical, ontological, and teleological. Are you impressed? Don't be, because I had to look those up to even know what I was talking about, okay? The first one, axiological, and what's the other one? The fifth one, ontological. I looked up those definitions. I'm not going to attempt to tell you what those mean, okay? We're going to look at the second one I mentioned, cosmological, and we're going to look at the sixth one, teleological, because both of those arguments deal with the natural world around us, and that is what we're going to focus in on, okay? As I told you last week, modern science is not against the Bible. Some